Sick of getting blisters? Stop slipping and just be comfortable with Pure Grip Socks Pro. Great fit, great comfort, lots of grip, and an even better price. Available now at puregripsocks.com.
Could this technology be the future of football boots? Ladies and gentlemen, say hello to the Eason version of the Nike Phantom GX2 Academy, where the standard variation would feature a more traditional lacing setup with laces that need to be either loosened, tightened, and then ultimately tied. What you find with the Eason version is, I guess for lack of a better word, still technically shoestrings. However, they're all anchored to one point right here and secured by way of Velcro on the outside of your ankle. With this latest Eason technology effectively being an evolution of what we've been getting for the last couple years in the form of Flyease, where the idea behind this particular football boot is for somebody that would have a harder time with either tying laces or putting the boots on, perhaps both of those things. This is an option for somebody because of its design, where you can basically unvelcro them at the side, step on the back of the heel, hence the S-curve, slide your foot inside of the boots, and then simply wrap this over top and secure them in place, and they're good to go. Where they're essentially like a pair of laceless football boots in the sense that you don't have to tie them, but unlike a true laceless design, you still have the ability to adjust the tightness of the boot depending on the specific shape of your feet, with the Flyease version of the Phantom GX2 Academy retailing for the same $90 as the regular version. Where as of right now, the Eason fastening system is exclusive to this one model at a more budget-friendly price point, but at the end of the day, there's really nothing about this system that wouldn't necessarily work on a higher-end football boot, and when done with perhaps even more premium materials and design, perhaps it could be the next big thing that we see from Nike in the world of football boots. So with that in mind, in today's video, we're gonna go over all the details of these very unique football boots, the upsides and the downsides of the Eason system, and of course, take a look at how they fit and feel on feet. So if you're interested in learning more, please stick around, and if you are interested in a pair for yourself, you can actually pick them up below their normal retail price by way of some exclusive SR4U coupon codes by checking out the first link down below. And as always, if you enjoy the unsugar-coated, brutally honest content on this channel, don't forget to drop a like on the video and make sure you're subscribed if you haven't already so you don't miss out on my reviews of all the latest football boots of 2024. So first things first, it must be said that this new Eason system is leaps and bounds ahead of what Nike was doing previously with their Flyease concept, which was originally introduced a couple years ago as basically an option for somebody that otherwise would not be able to put on and tighten their football boots on their own, providing them with a little bit of independence, which as a concept is such a cool idea. And while the Flyease boots did technically do that job, the design as a whole was a little bit janky, and the boots as a whole didn't fit the best and certainly weren't the most comfortable. Where the Eason system isn't just a huge improvement for the original kind of use case application of this concept, but I think for the everyday consumer, for somebody that just wants a pair of boots that they can slide on their feet, loosen super easily by removing the Velcro and then just kind of pulling this into place, securing it, and never having to worry about the tension of the upper changing or your laces coming untied, I think it's just a really cool idea that actually works quite well. Granted, just like laceless football boots, there's gonna be plenty of people watching this video right now saying to themselves they would never wear a pair of football boots fastened by way of Velcro, and if that's you, that's totally fine. And I would say that's kind of the one hold up in terms of if Nike were to ever implement this type of technology on a higher end football boot, they would need to do it in a way that maybe seems a little bit more streamlined and less kind of low tech than just Velcro on the side of the ankle. But considering that, the way that this system functions is actually really impressive, and in terms of actually holding your foot in place, it does as good a job as laces would do, sort of. And the reason why I say that is because of how this system actually works, where the cables themselves are very similar to a Nike Flywire or a Brio cable that we've seen across the brand for quite some time now, where you basically have 4 anchor points here on the lateral side of the foot. They're just held in place right there. They don't actually flow all the way down the side for those that are wondering. And then if we remove the Velcro, you can see they run on a diagonal from the outside of the foot to the inside of the foot, with those original strings kind of looped through these 4 lace loops that stick out and are anchored on the opposite side of the tongue area. As that flows across, all of those strings flow into this basically patch of Velcro, and then the way that you add tension or loosen the boots is basically by pulling this back across, which will in turn run those strings through those loops, tighten the overall upper, and then you anchor it in place by way of Velcro on the outside of your ankle. Is it a perfect system? Absolutely not. But in terms of maintaining some level of adjustability and then ultimately locking tension in place on an upper without the use of traditional laces, this is the best concept that I've ever tried on a pair of football boots. As far as the Easy On concept is concerned, obviously compared to a normal GX2 Academy, you do get this little bit of a unique design in terms of basically an S-curve heel from the Adidas X16 here on a Nike boot, where you do have a really solid internal plastic heel counter, a little bit harder than you would typically find, and because it's curved slightly open, it's designed to crunch a little bit and just allow you to more easily slide your foot inside of the boot, although I'd make the argument that the opening as a whole is still quite small and it's going to take a little bit of pulling, which is why they also include this little nylon pull tab here on the side, where the tongue itself is made from the same kind of slightly padded synthetic material as the normal GX2 Academy, but it's actually connected on the medial side, giving you a little bit of a burrito style tongue that's actually anchored down by way of an elasticated stirrup on the lateral side, which doesn't actually allow this tongue to pop out of place. So everything holds itself really nicely. You can see when I pull that up, it does make the opening quite large. Slide your foot in, basically pull on this little piece and secure it in place by way of Velcro, where you can see they've actually given you a pretty large patch here so you can change up depending on the shape of your foot where you want it to basically rest. Beyond that, everything else about this version of the GX2 Academy is the same as the normal one, where basically the front part of the upper is made from their Nike Skin material, which is a mesh-based synthetic that's relatively thin, has some nice softness to it. You do get a little bit of ridge texturing on the surface that kind of mimics the design of the top-end model, but unlike that top-end Elite version, you're not going to find a grip knit upper. Instead, the upper's left pretty slick. You can see there's some glossy elements there implying that there is some extra grip, but in reality, this is a relatively slick finish to an upper, where especially in wet conditions, you're really not going to find anything in the way of extra grip. So that's a pretty big difference there. And then moving to the base, you're going to find basically what looks like the high-end model, but what is technically also made from a slightly cheaper plastic. The end result is something that's a little bit more flexible than what you'll find on the top-end boot, so maybe a little bit less responsive, but still something that I think feels quite good considering the sub $100 price point. And then this is where Nike's made a little bit of a confusing mistake, I would say, in that this is labeled as an FG-MG stud pattern, even though it's exactly the same as what would be the standard FG stud pattern on both the Pro and Elite tier options. In other words, if you have a more expensive version of the Phantom GX2, it's not designed for use on artificial grass, but if you have the Academy tier model with an FG-MG stud pattern, MG standing for multi-ground, you're perfectly okay to wear this on artificial grass, which I would personally not recommend. Having all of these bladed studs will create a very clingy surface, especially this circular stud pattern that you have at the front of the toe. It's not exactly the best in terms of twisting and pivoting despite the marketing, especially on artificial grass. It just kind of clings in place, but for use on natural grass firm plain surfaces, I think the stud pattern as a whole is okay. Fairly speed boot-like. I know a lot of people are still kind of upset that this stud pattern carried into the latest generation of Phantom rather than the original Phantom GX stud pattern. This was taken basically from the original Phantom Luna, but as a whole, I still think it does a pretty good job of providing really solid traction, again, pending that you're going to be using it exclusively on natural grass. And then there's the weight, where obviously there are some significant modifications to the Easy On version compared to the normal pair to make this concept work, but does that actually increase the weight of the boot in any meaningful way? Both in the same size 9.5 US. We'll start off with a normal pair of GX2 Academies. They weigh in at 8.1 ounces, the equivalent of 229 grams. Pretty standard for what you'd expect from a pair of football boots at this price point. Then we'll throw on the Eason version, and you can see that they weigh in at 8.4 ounces, the equivalent of 238 grams. So you're talking about give or take 10 grams, with obviously the Eason version being that little bit heavier, but considering you're at the 8-ounce weight range anyways, I really don't think that's a significant amount of weight, especially considering how different the construction of this boot actually is. What I'm about to do is something that I would not recommend you do with any normal pair of football boots, because you can severely damage the heel by bending the structure forward, which means it's going to dig into your heel and they're always going to be uncomfortable. However, the Eason system is designed just for this, where you can put the boot on the ground, slide your foot in the opening, step a little bit on that heel counter because it is curved slightly outward, and then just slide your foot inside of the boot, where as you can see, my foot's gone in pretty cleanly, although with grip socks, this is impossible, so do keep that in mind. If you want to wear grip socks, these are not going to be easy to put on like any, for the most part, kind of one-piece football boot, because the upper, while it does open up quite large, there is still that kind of stirrup on the inside that doesn't allow the tongue to pop up too much, because they want to keep it somewhat in place, which as you can see, it has done. It's crinkled a little bit, so I now have to kind of pull it right here to pull everything in place. And then of course, to fasten the boot, I'm going to pull on these strings, wrap it over top, and then secure it with the Velcro on the opposite side. And there you have it. The boots are good to go. As far as the fit and feel is concerned, for the first 10 minutes of wear or so, I did find the heel to be particularly stiff, just because the structure does come up a little bit higher than normal, but that's something that I got used to pretty quickly, and overall was not an issue in terms of comfort. The fit of the boot is definitely different from the standard version of the GX2 Academy, just because the construction of the upper is quite a bit different. The lacing system, or I guess fastening system in this situation, isn't quite as deep, so it doesn't run as low down into the upper, which means that you have more upper with basically no adjustability, and the shaping that they've gone with here is just lower volume overall. So while there is a decent amount of width through the midfoot, the boots definitely do pinch in quite a bit through the forefoot and toe box area. So that is something to be aware of. If you have really wide feet, these probably aren't going to be the best option for you because of that slightly lower volume shaping that they've gone for. As far as the Eason system itself is concerned, my foot feels very secure inside of these boots. The one thing that I will say is that the tension isn't necessarily even, where inevitably, depending on the shape of your foot, the tension is going to be the tightest on basically the part of your foot that sticks up the highest. So as an example, the highest volume part of my foot is towards the top here, meaning that there's the most tension here and then just a lot less tension in the strings down low, and there's really no way to change that. So if there is any room for improvement in terms of how this Eason system functions, it's that it does provide tension, but the tension itself isn't quite as adjustable as a standard pair of laces, where obviously if I was tying them, I could make them a little bit tighter down low while still maintaining the tension up top, perhaps have them a little bit looser up top and then tighter down low. You just don't really have that option with these. But then again, in terms of its intended use case application, it definitely does exactly what it's supposed to do. And in terms of just securing the tension of the upper on my feet in the easiest and quickest way possible, it has certainly done a very good job of that. From an overall fit perspective, like I said, not the best option for somebody with wide feet, or perhaps somebody that needs a little bit of extra volume to the shape of the upper. And as far as sizing is concerned, I'm wearing these in my usual size 9.5 US, and the fit and the length is perfect. So if you are looking to get a pair for yourself, I would strongly recommend going true to size in order to achieve the best possible fit. So in conclusion, despite its downsides, I'm really impressed by this Eason technology. It's a huge improvement over Flyease, and I think for its original use case application, if this is something that you would need for any reason, I think you're going to be really happy with the way that these boots ultimately fit, feel, and perform. And while I think it's easy to be critical of what is ultimately a sub $100 budget-friendly football boot, there is definite room for improvement here in terms of the shaping, the feel of the materials, and realistically, the evenness of the tension provided by this Eason system. But were Nike to implement this type of technology at an elite level price point with more premium materials and perhaps a little bit more attention to detail in terms of its overall design, I'd be really curious to try that football boot out, because I really do think that there is maybe not room for improvement over a traditional lacing system, but definitely a fit and feel that we've never had before in the world of football boots. Which is why I want to leave you with this question. If Nike were to implement some form of an easy-on system on an elite level football boot for everybody to wear, is that something that you'd be interested in, or is there just no way that you would want something that is secured in place by way of Velcro?